Good day to you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Film Focus, episode 187, the review for Nosferatu. Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen of the North, South, East, and West, and welcome to another episode of Film Focus. I'm your host, the Hypersonic55, and I'm glad that you decided to join me once again for some film-related discussion. And I know it's a bit late, but here is my first proper new review of 2025, and it comes in the form of Nosferatu. Now, this was probably my last most anticipated film of 2024, but because of the annoying nature of release dates between the US and the UK, they got it right towards the end of the year, and we had to wait until the start of this year to check it out. However, again, just due to the nature of my work, I just didn't have enough time to get around to watching it until recently. At the current time of recording it, I watched it yesterday, and I have thoughts to share. Now, before we get into the review itself, I just want to give you some context just before we get into everything. Now, as for Nosferatu itself, I've been aware of the original film from, I think it's like the 1920s, and I've seen his imagery lurking about on the internet and on TV and stuff like that for a while. I want to say that there was someone watching the Nosferatu film in either a film or TV show, and that was probably my first exposure to the character. And obviously there was that episode of SpongeBob where he showed up at the end just for this stupid little comedic moment where he kept flipping the lights on and off. That was a really fun moment. But as for Nosferatu itself, I haven't actually seen the film or any of the various other incarnations. And funnily enough, after I came out of watching Nosferatu, the Robert Eggers version that we're going to be discussing today, I haven't actually seen any Dracula related movies. I've seen films where Dracula is sort of adjacent to the main story and stuff like that, but with him being the main focus, whether we're talking about the Universal Hammer films or the Bram Stoker's Dracula film from the 90s or any of those kind of things, I've not actually seen any of them. And it's not so much due to lack of interest. I find vampires pretty interesting creatures, and Dracula has a very unique persona, and the way he comes across, the castle that he normally hangs around in, and how he conducts himself is pretty interesting, especially when he can turn into a bat, and the style of his clothing and the choice of accent depending on which incarnation you're talking about. It's all pretty cool. It's just a case of just finding time to watch these things. And I don't know about you, but I have 50,000 things to go about and watch at any given time, whether it's stuff I just want to rewatch for fun, stuff I need to do for research, stuff I've been meaning to get around to for a while. And sometimes in your watch list, you'll see a few things here and there and you're thinking, I probably should watch that. But you have to be in the right mindset. And I just never got around to watching the original Nosferatu, which I did want to check out before watching the Robert Eggers edition, but I almost decided not to go with the original just because I wanted to see what original material that Robert Eggers would come up with. And speaking of Robert Eggers as a director, I've liked his material that I've seen so far. At this point in time, I still haven't seen The Lighthouse, but I like The Witch and I really like The Northman. So with all the positive word of mouth coming out of Nosferatu during the early reviews that came out last year, I was like, yo, this is going to be some hype stuff. I saw only one trailer. It looked unique. It had a very large scope to it. And I remember I was interested in this film from the time it was announced, especially with the cast involved. And again, I've been very much looking forward to this film for a while. And then I ended up seeing, and it's tricky. I'd say overall, I enjoyed my time with the film, and I think it is a spectacular looking film with great performances. But it just didn't resonate with me on that frequency that I'd hoped for. Maybe it was like the hype got too big for me. Maybe I was expecting something else. I'm not too sure. It's still a compelling film that does deserve to be seen, but again, it just wasn't, what I had wanted in terms of like that sort of, oh my gosh, this is a great film experience. Now, before you guys come to the comments and try to crucify me, allow me to explain in my review. So As per usual, we'll talk about the story, characters, and presentation, and then have the conclusion at the end. So without further ado, let's jump in. Alright, so the plot for this film can be summed up as the following. This is a tale of obsession between a young woman and a terrifying vampire. Now, this young woman has been cursed with visions and dreams of this benevolent force for many years now, and it has started to affect her marriage, but also, as the film continues, we see that there are larger forces at play, and there are more dangerous situations to arise. And that is a way for me to summarize the film without going into the area of spoilers. Now, I feel like the marketing team did a pretty good job of hiding some of the plot and some of the key details as to what to expect from the film. It does present something that is dark, grim, violent, and potentially scary, but there is so much more going on with this film. It has a very supernatural and creepy kind of vibe. It's definitely violent, but I wouldn't say too violent. I think what intrigued me the most about the story of this film was the central relationship between the vampire and the main lady in question, and just how long it's been going on for, how it affects her relationship not only with her husband but with her friends as well, and seeing how there are other people who view this vampire, who are aware of its force, some who believe, some who don't. And I've always liked that kind of creepy vibe that comes with certain horror films, where there is just that mood, that feeling in the atmosphere that something's off, that there is a greater evil out there that some are aware of and some aren't. And there's something kind of magical about the supernatural when it comes to filmmaking, because it allows you to play around with time, with people's perception of things, not only from the character's point of view but also from the audience point of view as well. And there are a lot of interesting things where I was just like ooh and ah, and was just like, oh, they're doing this, okay, interesting. And because of the time that the film is set in and some of the things that this version of the vampire can do, it did remind me of a certain video game series that came out within the last 5 to 10 years that involved a brother and sister are navigating across a whole load of land trying to run away from a pretty notable force. And there are moments in this film where you get to see some of that in this film, and I was like, oh, that reminds me of those games I was watching Let's Plays of. But anyway, I digress. I think just plot wise, it was, fairly effective. I was intrigued and compelled enough to watch it till the end, and it was definitely the atmosphere was perfect, and it was noticeably creepy and fun. But I think, I don't know what I was expecting from the story, but by the time it was over, I was just like, okay, I get it, I'm happy that I saw it. But at the same time, I'm just like, I just didn't get that same sort of wow kind of feeling. Now, obviously, not every film has to be a 10 out of 10, but considering Eggers' record so far, I've liked what I've seen from him. So this is the first time I came out of one of his films where I'm just like, I'm not in love with this. And considering how many people were saying that this is either his best film or another hit for him, I was just like, I don't know. But yeah, I don't know how to describe or quantify exactly why that feeling just didn't give me that same sort of elation that I'd hoped for, but that's just how I came out of the story in the end. Alright, and now it's time to talk about the cast, and I thought that they all did a pretty good job with their material. I think the performances were pretty stunning, save for a couple moments with one person, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Now, firstly, Lily Rose Depp as Ellen, the main character in question, I thought she was pretty darn good. She had a lot of moments where she had to do a lot of long takes, a lot of talking, a lot of interacting with other characters, and I think that she made me buy into what she was dealing with. It was pretty solid. There were a few moments, however, where I wasn't quite buying her performance, and to be able to speak about that would go into spoilers, and I don't want to do that, but there were just a couple moments here and there where I was like, I don't quite buy this 100%. But for the most part, she was great. And then you have Nicholas Hoult as Thomas, and I thought he was great. Nicholas Hoult, again, is one of those sort of actors where I've seen him for a while, and most things that I see him in, he's always really good. And I feel like his performances and filmography are only getting better with time. Again, I think the first major thing I noticed him in was X-Men First Class, and since then I've been a big fan of his material. So I thought he was pretty solid. And then of course you have Bill Skarsgård as Count Orlok, aka Nosferatu, and this was not the version of the character I was expecting. He was a lot more grotesque in his appearance. The voice was so funky, and it was a very intimidating performance. Now, I think a lot of that has to do with the way that he was presented in, camera, and the makeup and, costume department that do deserve some props in this film as well. But he was unpleasant and very good, so I guess that worked. And then there's Aaron Taylor Johnson as Frederick, and he was really good in this film as well. Again, Aaron Taylor Johnson, another one of those guys that I noticed from Kick-Ass way back when in 2010. And, he's gone on to do so many good films. He's also ended up in a lot of pants movies as well. But it's films like these that show off how good he can be when he's given the right material. And his character was very compelling, very good, and he had a lot of really standout moments. So yeah, I was very pleased with that. And Willem Dafoe, what can be said that can't be said about him already? He's wonderful. He played Professor Albin, and he had so many interesting and cool moments to shine in this film. Very, very good. Emma Corrin played Anna, his wife, and she was also pretty good in the film. And Ralph Ineson as Dr. Willem Silvers. I'm bad at saying somebody's name, so apologies. But yeah, Ralph, again, is another one of those actors who I've seen around for a good few years, but I've seen him in a lot more projects recently. And he's always given 100% with his roles. And he was great in this movie, really good. And there's also Simon McBurney, who played Hernock. And I've heard his voice in a few different projects here and there. So when he started speaking in the film, I know you from somewhere, but I just couldn't tell. And when I looked him up on his filmography, he ended up being in a few different projects I've seen. I think the most notable one was Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. And I was like, yeah, of course. But he played a pretty interesting character in this film. His performance was very memorable, and I thought it was pretty good. Alright, and now it's time to talk about the presentation, and honestly, this is my favourite aspect of the film. Visually, this film was stunning, with very distinctive lighting and shadows, and the film just has a very unique kind of presentation that feels similar to what Robert Eggers has put out in his previous films, but it's very moody and atmospheric. There's a muted color scheme, and there are so many cool moments of cool camera work and interesting scene transitions, which allows you to get lost in this sort of otherworldly nature that comes with the characters and the scenarios that they're in. And I also really liked the use of sound, and there are moments where sound is necessary and sound isn't, and obviously there are certain moments for jump scares here and there, but they feel like they are thoughtfully put together and pretty effective. And then there's a score as well that was also pretty distinctive and notable. So the film score was done by Robin Carolan, and I'm not familiar with their name in terms of film composition, but I thought that they had done a pretty good job with this, where the music definitely felt haunting, intense, and again, just as any good film score does, it elevates the material that you're watching. So yeah, that was pretty good as well. Alright, so now we come to the conclusion. Overall, I thought Nosferatu was a pretty good film, again with fantastic presentation, great performances, and a unique story that's worth watching. But again, for some reason the film just didn't butter my bread in the way that I was hoping. Now, I'm sure that I'll probably get some flack for not being in love with this film like everybody else is, but I'm used to being that one guy that may not love, one of the more popular films that come out during the year. Maybe I'm just a weirdo, but I don't know. But yeah, now I turn it over to you. What did you think of Nosferatu? Did you love it? Did you dislike it? And where did it fall on your top 10 films of 2024? If it did, whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comment section below, or hit me up on Twitter where I'm at FilmFocus55 or at Hypersonic55 as well. Check out the Instagram page, the Facebook page, and obviously the podcast is available on all places where podcasts can be found. And until the next time, this is the Hypersonic 55 signing out. Peace.